Welcome to a short preview of this Screencasts Online video tutorial.
This week, I'd like to tell you about a mind mapping application that I'm crazy about called iThoughts from toketaWare. You'll still see the nomenclature iThoughts 10 from time to time throughout some of the documentation, but it is the new iThoughts. You may remember in Screencasts Online 7.13, Mike Schmitz showed us MindNode that is also for mind mapping. Both of these applications are terrific. MindNode is beautiful in its simplicity, while iThoughts brings significantly more capability. I think it's great that we have so many options for mind mapping, which allows you to find the tool that will help you be as productive as possible. There are 3 options on how to buy iThoughts for the Mac. You can buy a single license directly from toketaWare for $49.99. If you use a PC, you can also buy a license for Windows for $49.99 from toketaWare. You can buy iThoughts for all of your Macs through the Mac App Store for the same $49.99. And it's also included in SetApp if you have a subscription. A universal iOS app is available through the App Store for $11.99 for your iPhone, your iPad, and your iPod Touch. You'll also see iThoughts to Go for iOS in the App Store, and that's a simple viewer for your iThoughts mind maps. Mike gave us a good explanation of where mind maps can be useful. I'd like to add to that a little bit. Here you see a mind map for what I might plan to bring with me on a vacation to Hawaii. It's nicely organized with my electronics on the right and other items on the left and subcategories in each to help me remember what I need to bring. Now, people often ask, why not just use an outline or a simple list for something like this? The problem is that our ideas do not come into our heads in this organized way. The things to pack for vacation pop into our brains at all different times, in all different places, and in completely random order. Not only that, these ideas come to us when we're at all different places. You might think about what to pack when you're at work, you're at home, you're shopping, or maybe you're even at the gym. The other thing is that these ideas come to us when we're in front of completely different devices. If you're at work or at home, you might be in front of your computer. But if you're at the grocery store, you've only got your phone. Maybe you're at the gym and you're watching Screencasts Online on your tablet, and you think of more ideas then. It's important that the mind mapping application support all of your devices so that you can get the ideas down and out of your brain so that you can organize them later in your mind map. By now, you're bought into the idea that a mind map might just help solve some problems for you. So let's take a look at the interface for iThoughts on the Mac. When you first open it, you're going to have a central idea in the middle, and up above here, you're going to see your notes area. Let me just do some of the basic features first. Double tap on here, and I'm going to select this text, and we'll start with our Hawaii packing list as an example that we can all relate to. Now, I want to add some child nodes. I can do that a bunch of different ways. The easiest way to me is I simply hit the Tab key. So now I can type in, say, my camera. The easiest way to make a sibling node is to hit the Enter key twice.
That's just a quick preview of one of this week's Apple-related tutorials from Screencasts Online. Screencasts Online is your premium source of Apple-related video tutorials. All of our members get access to brand new, up-to-date tutorials each week, as well as unlimited access to our entire video archive full of Mac and iOS-related tutorials. You can stream and download all of our videos on your Mac, iPad and iPhone, and even your Apple TV using the members-only Screencasts Online Apple TV app. Membership also includes a complimentary subscription to the digital Screencasts Online monthly magazine, published each month and packed with videos, articles, reviews, as well as hints and tips covering all aspects of the Mac, iPad, iPhone, and all of the other fantastic Apple products. So, if you're ready to start getting the most out of your Apple devices, visit screencastsonline.com today and become a Screencasts Online member.